The door opened, and we were brought outside of that holding cell, recuffed, and taken into the space for the defender, the public defender, to talk to us. And then, as we were sitting there was a man wearing a white Patagonia sweater, walked in with a smirk on his face, and he said, "Weeks, pick up the phone." And I said, "Yes, sir. What's going on?" He said, "It looks like the original waiver that was signed 3 weeks ago has expired, and we will have to see what the judge wants to do next." I said, "That's it? Am I getting out of here?" And he was like, "Well, we'll see what he says. Good luck." I sat back down in my chair with more stress and anxiety. I watched a young woman with long black hair and dark skin enter the room on the other side. This was Helton's public defender. And she said, "I don't know how this is going to work out." She said, "You were already on probation." And she said, "Now you've been charged with sex trafficking." And she said, "Well, can you call and at least see if I can get out of here and get in a program?" And she said, "A program could shorten some of your time." She said, "Are you willing to accept a plea?" And she said, "Sure." Without hesitation, this girl was going to take a plea deal and take time in jail for some man. She did not have the money for a proper attorney and could not figure out, how they were not investigating this or going deeper into this. So we waited a long time in that room together, and we could hear male deputies outside talking about an inmate that had stuck her 2 fingers in her eyes and pulled her eyeballs out a few days prior. And they were laughing about it with no compassion or care. A lot of jokes. And so Helton was, popping off. "Shut the fuck up. You faggot piece of shit. Let us out of here." And I was like, whoa, I don't want any more problems behind these walls. And the more she screamed, the longer we had to sit there and wait. "Let's go, girls." We walked down the hall and into the cell where we'd go before a judge. And it was freezing in there, just like last time. The judge spoke to the public defender about my waiver. And he said, "Why has this woman not been transported out of the jail? Floyd County has less than a week to pick her up, or I'm releasing her. California taxpayers are not going to pay to hold her here." And he said, "Your Honor, we spoke to the DA in Floyd County this morning, and they have someone arranged to pick her up." And that was it. And the woman in there with me received 5 years in prison for sex trafficking. We were all taken out of the cell and walked back to the original holding cell with all the other inmates. I sat down next to a woman banging her head against the concrete wall, and she'd just bang it until she'd pass out. I was getting hungry. I stood up to stretch, and 3 women were laying on that nasty floor having conversations about strip clubs that they worked at. And this was kind of like the conversation was, "Girl, Lil D's isn't making me any money." "No, you won't make any money there. You got to come over to Shake's Club. I'm making $700 a night." I stretched my back against the wall, and then I engaged in some of their conversation. And there was another young woman to the left of me, and I looked at her and I said, "I'm going to write a book about this place." And she said, "George, are you going to put us in this book?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm going to go back home and tell anyone that is saying shit to me that I did time in Las Colinas." As I said those words, I paced with like this tough look. I wanted to look scary when I said it. And the women were laughing hysterically at me. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to go back and be like, hey, don't you mess with me. I did time in Las Colinas." And one of the women said, "I think Las Colinas means angel." And we all laughed some more. And one of the Hispanic women said, "Girl, you crazy." She said, "It don't mean angel." She said, "It means something else." So we had that moment of some comedy. Then we heard the bus coming, so we all stood up chanting, "It's the bus, it's the bus." "All right, ladies, get up here and line up against the wall. When I say your name, answer me." I was listening for my name while the deputies was taking chains to cuff the other inmates. And when it was my turn, I put my hands up against the wall, and she said, "Don't you dare turn around, Weeks." And I mean, I had done nothing that even looked like I was remotely turning around. I had looked straight at the wall, and the chains were feeling so heavy to me by this time because of the lack of nutrition and me losing muscle mass and not having just the energy in there. We walked back through the door, and the music was just turned up loud enough on the bus where we didn't have to hear conversations. And I started hearing the song come on, Bring Me to Life by Evanescence. And I had my cheek, just kind of pressed up against the window, and the lyrics were, "Without a soul, my spirit's sleeping somewhere cold. Until you find it there, lead it back home." The door opened for the inmate bus to pull out of the Sally Porton on the street, and then the part of the song came on. It was almost like a planned video. This door's raising, the bus is rolling out on the street, and then all of a sudden, the lyrics are screaming, "Wake me up inside. I can't wake up. Save me. Call my name and save me from the dark." I felt that reach deep into my soul. It was my cry to spirit earlier the month before. And as bad as all this had been, it was going to save me from the darkness. There was already proof of that light from Christ, and that jail was saving me. And so we passed by Little Caesar's Pizza, and I could taste every ingredient. And after returning to Las Colinas, we were placed in the holding cell and called by threes. Weeks go in, stall, strip down naked. It was the same process again. And so I took off my blues and I stood there naked in front of the deputy in my orange flip-flops. And my heartbeat just began to race with all the embarrassment and shame that I had to spread my genitals and allow a stranger to stare at me. Even as I talk about this and when I wrote about this, I could feel the effects of what that did to my body. And so it was, open your mouth, run your fingers through your hair, pull back your ears, now turn around, bend over, spread your ass, cough. I felt frozen. And I picked up the stained underwear and the bra and I put them back on. And as I started pulling the shirt over my head, I felt the tears. And just the nastiness of putting on a pair of underwear that was stained and it was not my stain. And just everything that had just happened in that scene. And I just walked away in a silent cry. And then I heard, "What's wrong with Weeks?" "Nothing," I mumbled. When I returned back to my dorm, my cold dinner was waiting on the desk as usual. And as soon as I got a chance to speak to the deputy, I wanted to find out what that computer system was saying. And so I walked up and I said, "Hey, I went to court today." And she said, I said, "Can you look and see if there's any updates in the computer?" She said, "Weeks, you're scheduled for pickup." She said, "It doesn't say when." I said, "Okay." I said, "Thank you." Well, there were a lot of inmates sitting over in the common area reading the newspaper. And this is when this new deadly virus had hit the U.S. And they were calling it COVID-19. And as we followed the story, apparently there was a shortage of toilet paper and cleaning supplies, and businesses were shutting down. And there was some seriousness in that moment. And We heard, "Hey, ladies, listen up." She said, she said, "I want your full attention." So we all walked toward the deputy, and she said, "We need to start taking some precautions and cleaning this dorm better." She said, "If anyone's experiencing a cough or fever, headache," she said, "let me know now." And so wanting to be funny in any kind of stressful situation, I said, "Hey, deputy," I said, "if you run out of toilet paper at home," I said, "you can borrow some of ours." Well, she laughed for about 30 seconds along with some of the other inmates. I mean, I knew it was serious, but I knew that we also needed to break some of the stress and tension in there that we were feeling. On March 13th, 2020, it was a Friday, and I had spent some time talking to Jonathan and Susan and my dad. I did a lot of laughing with Susan that day, and it was a steady rain for the first time since I've been brought in. I'm sorry, I'm crying because I know it's getting close to me being put out of there. And this has been a long story and an exhausting story, but it's really about to get hard. When I'm picked up from that jail, it really is going to be hard, and I'm trying not to procrastinate or be hesitant about following through with this story, but honestly, just bear with me. I thought a lot about how God used me to pray for myself and for the other women before we saw the judge yesterday. And I continued to allow Jesus to use me as a light in there. And I kept praying for love and support and what I would need in order to get through Jason's first year of being gone. And I imagine the beauty in Jesus touching Peter's mom and healing her fever. And I imagine Jesus in his homelessness and how he had nowhere to lay his head. But he healed, he loved, he stood up for the poor, he set prisoners free. And I just kept reading the Gospels over and over again. And my perspective was totally different than when I started reading them 10 years prior. I took some more time on my cot to reflect on about who I was in Christ and who I am in Christ. And I wanted quiet, but there was a young girl in there, and she had come in the day before, and she was loud as hell. I mean, it didn't matter how many times she was yelled at for being loud. She just kept on being sarcastic toward the deputy and the other inmates. She kept singing these rap songs and that were so disgusting. I tried pulling my sweatshirt over my ears, but it just wasn't enough to drown out the noise. And so I just began to write on my stationery. And this was some more that I had written about, I am not who I am to Christ from the clothes I wear, the car I drive, the house I live in, the money I have. And then I just had this memory of me in 7th grade. We were really poor growing up, and I was getting bullied and picked on at school because I didn't dress cool. That same year for Christmas, my mom bought me a leather bomber jacket. That's when leather jackets were really popular. It was like 1989, 88. And while I was eating in the lunchroom, I would sit alone. But the day after returning from Christmas break, I, was wearing this new bomber jacket. One of the popular girls said, "Look, Brittany's wearing a leather jacket. She's cool. Let's sit with her." And so it became a way of acceptance to wear stylish clothing and fit in with other people. And now here I was, stripped of all those name brands, everything. And I was just wearing blues, the pants and the shirt. And I had to be me. I couldn't hide under clothes. And Jesus had nothing but was able to do great things in love. So I took out a pack of tuna as I was sitting in my cubby area, and I had saved some of the wheat bread that I had stashed away from the day before's lunch, and I made a tuna sandwich. And I just, again, I thought about my grandmother making those tuna sandwiches in her home. And so I got down and I started kneeling, and I started crying again. Grandma, please forgive me. I'm so sorry that I stayed with the ex-girlfriend, and now it's gotten us into this mess. My heart hurts when I think about never being able to see you again. After some time went by, I discovered the new inmate lived with her grandmother, and they were poor, and she didn't have any extra money in there for food. So I was putting together some tuna on a flour tortilla, and I walked up to her in the day room, and I said, "Here," I said, "I want to share this with you." I said, "It's tuna, it'll give you some protein." And she said, "Ma'am, thank you." She said, "Thank you for helping me." She said, "I was starving." And I knew that feeling. I knew what that feeling was like because I'd been there 3 weeks prior. And I just wanted to take her home. Who knew why she was having to live with her grandmother? I never got that part of her story. And her hair was just unkept, and her nail beds were dirty, and she was hungry, and that's all I needed to see. It was enough to know that I needed to extend my love to her.